presidents, prime ministers, ministers, excellencies, Professor Grosse, Professor Liebing, colleagues from the cabinet and from the German Bundestag, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by saying that I would like to wish a particularly warm message to the President of Egypt, His Excellency President Al-Sisi, who's not only chairing the African Union, but who also celebrates his 65th birthday today in Germany. Warmest congratulations, Mr. President, and all the best to you personally. I'm delighted to be able to open this conference together with you, and particularly, obviously, to the many, together with the many guests from our partners countries of the Compact with Africa. I would like to welcome in particular the many heads of state and government and who have come to Berlin. And I would like to thank also the organizers of this conference, the German African Business Association and SAFRI. We are your guests here today in the House of the German Business Community. All of the associations of the German business community are reunited here under one and the same roof. They're doing their job, and they are, in a way, this is their home. So we are at the very heart of the German business associations, be it about climate, about peace, about economic developments, about migration or other great issues of our times. We're all agreed that Africa, with its more than 50 states and a growing population, particularly a young generation, it will play a very important role in solving global issues. As we see it, Africans and Europeans face many common challenges, and this is why we have considerably increased our cooperation over the past few years, because we firmly believe that it is not only in the African interest, but in our mutual interest indeed, particularly also as the largest economy here in Europe, particularly in the German interest, to cooperate. And obviously I was able to travel to a number of African states, unfortunately not to each and every one. I think I've only reached about 50% of them, but I'm delighted to see quite often heads of state and government from Africa here. One always has to obviously do one's homework back home, so thank you all the more for taking time and the trouble to come here. I think we're also agreed that apart from development cooperation, we have to also help you to come to self-sufficient economic development and growth. And this is why during our G20 presidency in 2017, we launched the Compact with Africa initiative, because as we see it, the goal of this initiative is, in particular, to enlist the support of private investors so that they may take out investments in the individual African countries. And we know that the African countries themselves have made tremendous efforts, have also set themselves a very ambitious agenda. I would say one of the most recent climaxes was certainly the conference in Niamey, where you agreed to establish an African continental free trade zone. I think apart from the regional organizations that have a very high profile already on the African continent, this decision that you took was indeed a groundbreaking one and pointed in the right direction, and my congratulations on this. We have a bit of an idea how difficult it is to establish a single market, we as Europeans. It's quite difficult also to fill this with life. As we know, we have the barriers to trade because of tariffs, but also non-tariff barriers of trade with which you have to grapple and wrestle. And after so many years of European Union, we still don't have a perfect internal market, and particularly with a view to digitalization, we now have to face quite new questions. We have dealt with digital issues here in Germany, and at the very end, the representative of Smart Africa also yesterday presented to us his views in the cabinet, how he wishes to foster digitalization for Africa. He gave us a report on the efforts you make, and I must say that was quite encouraging. So, what we say is that these initiatives basically also have to be measured by the yardstick of your Agenda 2036 that you set out sort of 100 years after the end of colonization. And yesterday we talked to President Kone from Smart Africa also about the issue of digital sovereignty, because even in times of digitalization, you can again get into massive dependence on others. And as he described it, data are the new oil. So all of a sudden, this is no longer owned by us. Incidentally, that's what he said, but incidentally, it's a problem that we in Europe have just the same. So cooperation in this area is also, I think, well worth our while. So we have this compact with Africa. 12 countries are members of this. And the idea was and is to set this up as a G20 initiative. So it's not only in and of itself a German initiative. It is actually one that is pushed forward by all of the G20 member countries, but we, in a way, we are the sort of patron, if you like, of this idea, of this initiative. But the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, is supporting it by now. And this afternoon, as you know, we'll be joined by representatives of these international organizations. We also try to think, what can we do? Because this initiative in the effort means that in the African countries themselves, of course, you do quite a lot in order to improve transparency of your financial system, of your fiscal policies, of your debt management, of governance. So basically, you are trying your level best to improve governance in your countries. We believe, and I'm firmly convinced of this, that more transparency will also lead to more investors taking an interest in your countries. Because for German investors and also for other investors from the G20, but particularly for German SMEs, for example, it is most important that there is trust, that there is transparency, that they know where do they invest, what sort of conditions do I find on the ground. And we'd like to give the right incentives so that these countries who are part and parcel of Compact with Africa are successful, that this also means improved investment conditions for our businesses. We launched an investment fund for this purpose, and let me remind you, we designed this last year. I just want to remind all of us of the 3 different pillars on which this rests. The first one is Africa Connect. That is to help SMEs from Germany and Europe to be better supported in financing our projects and investment projects with Compact with Africa. We tried this in June. We have more than 220 demands and applications for this. First projects will be approved soon, and some of them will be actually presented here today. The second pillar is the so-called Business Network Africa, the Wirtschaftsnetzwerk Afrika. It helps German companies with customized advice on possible supports to receive and also on economic and legal conditions in the African countries. And the third pillar is the Development Investment Fund Africa Grow. We will try and tap the potential of proven African funds and through them provide venture and with them provide venture capital for African startups. Just recently, I had an opportunity to talk to Juliana Rotic, this year's honoree of the German Africa Prize, and she and I discussed the difficulties to actually find local investors who'd be interested to take out investments. And I think that is indeed a weak point that needs to be addressed in order to get more venture capital. And we also rendered the conditions for export guarantees and investment guarantees more attractive. Ever since 2018, exports to compact countries to the tune of 300 and have been secured by federal guarantees to the tune of 330 million euros. There are right now applications of almost 1 billion euros, so we're increasing here. And we know, if we compare this to China, obviously it is a relatively small number, but we also know that we need to boost foreign trade because quite often it heralds a stronger engagement on the ground. So these numbers are quite promising. So we also looked at the World Bank Index Doing Business. It is important important for a number of investors, obviously. How has this developed, this index with the compact countries over the past few years? And the index has improved quite significantly among compact countries. So I can only congratulate you on these efforts that you have made. So there are a number of practical examples, and I know that in the atrium you can also get first-hand information on these various projects and the conditions on the ground. The decision to invest in Africa remains obviously up to private business. We as a government cannot sort of take this as our responsibility, but we can create trust. We can say to an entrepreneur that the compact countries do show more transparent conditions than others by comparison. And as a further step, we then addressed an issue that is now basically within the remit of Minister Müller and his team in the Ministry of Economic Cooperation. We set up bilateral cooperation schemes with a number of compact countries. Ghana, Tunisia and Cote d'Ivoire are cases in point, and now also with Senegal and Ethiopia. And this is an open invitation to all. We're talking then obviously about the conditions. The minister, as you know, is also engaged with many other countries outside of the compact and is talking to them. Now, matters actually have progressed. I don't want to paint too rosy a picture. We all know that we still have problems to solve. There's the question of security, particularly in the Sahel area, in the Sahel zone. We have other instruments also in order to try and reconcile here development and security. But obviously there's a huge challenge due to terrorist activities. We then have the great challenge of population growth. You have very, very young people, and a lot of them in Africa, and they obviously press you for change. And it's quite different from what we have in Germany. You know that we have an aging population, so we talk more about how can we ensure adequate pension funds for all of them, but you have young people and they have their needs, obviously, that need to be met. We are talking also about the special initiative on training and jobs. The goal is to create 100 places of 30,000 places of training and 100,000 jobs there on the ground. And we also want to launch, obviously, on the basis of this new act on the immigration of skilled labor, an open sort of our arms to others. The chambers of industry and trade abroad will be the first point of contact for that. We will also later, and in the next year, we will have an open forum where we want to discuss ways and means of how we can actually canvass job opportunities here in Germany, in Africa. So the main point of this morning here is obviously not my speech, but getting people together in order to have concrete projects presented also. And that means that we get to know a little bit more about your countries, you who are our guests here today. So I would like to quote an African proverb that says, you must attend to the business with the vendor in the market and not to the noise of the market. The market is in a way now taken here to Berlin, but you have to go there, you have to get to know how it is. May this conference inspire new ventures on our respective marketplaces, and thank you for taking the trouble to come here.